Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here, Virgo. They've written the message, deleted it, written it again. Something is happening in the silence between you, not the peaceful kind of silence, not the silence of two people who have reached an understanding and no longer need words to maintain it. The other kind, the dense, almost suffocating silence of someone who has something to say, who has been trying to find a way to say it, who has been sitting with it for longer than silence was ever designed to hold, and who keeps, for reasons that have everything to do with fear and nothing to do with indifference, pulling back from the edge of saying it. That silence has a weight to it. And if you've been feeling something pressing from the direction of it, something that doesn't quite resolve into the clean, a finished quality that actual endings tend to produce, there may be a reason for that. Uh, there is a specific kind of preoccupation that lives at the intersection of feeling and restraint, not obsession in the chaotic, destabilizing sense, not the obsession that consumes and disorders and makes a person unrecognizable to themselves, the quieter kind. The kind that operates beneath the surface of a person's ordinary days, beneath the functioning and the presenting and the careful maintenance of a life that appears from the outside to be moving forward. The kind that makes itself known in the specific, involuntary moments, in the reach for a phone that stops halfway, in the draft that gets written and deleted and written again, in the particular quality of stillness that settles over a person when a name arrives, uninvited, in the middle of something entirely unrelated. That kind of preoccupation is not casual. It is not the residue of something minor. It is the entirely predictable symptom of a feeling that has not been given permission to move, that has been contained, managed, held at the border between interior and expression, and that continues with the patient insistence of something that knows it is real to press. Let me tell you what obsessing over reaching out actually looks like from the inside of the person experiencing it. It doesn't look like chaos. It doesn't look like the unhinged, visible desperation that the word obsessing tends to conjure. It looks instead like a person who is having a very long, very exhausting argument with themselves, who constructs the case for reaching out, assembles every reason, every piece of evidence, every honest acknowledgement of what they feel, and then methodically and with considerable effort dismantles it, who picks up the phone and puts it down, who opens a conversation and closes it, who types the first word of something real and then sits with the cursor blinking at them like a question they don't yet have the courage to answer. This reflection invites you to consider, what does it feel like in your body right now to sit with the possibility that someone is in the middle of exactly that argument, that somewhere in the private interior of their ordinary day, your name is the subject of a case being made and unmade over and over with an intensity that has nothing to do with indifference and everything to do with something considerably more complicated? Because complicated is the word, not simple longing, not the clean, uncomplicated wanting of someone who simply desires and acts on the desire. Something more layered than that. Something that contains simultaneously, without resolution, the wanting itself and the fear of what the wanting reveals, and the history of what has already passed between you and the specific acute vulnerability of reaching towards someone who has the particular power to disappoint you in the way that only people who truly matter can disappoint. All of it present at once. All of it pressing against the restraint at once. All of it making the simple act of sending a message feel from the inside like the most exposed thing a person has ever considered doing. Picture a bird at the edge of a branch in the moment before it decides whether to fly. Not hesitating out of inability, it knows how to fly. Not hesitating out of indifference, it has somewhere to go. Hesitating out of the specific, almost imperceptible calculation that happens in the space between impulse and action, where the body knows what it wants and the mind runs through every possible outcome before it will agree to let the wings open. That hesitation is not absence of feeling, it is feeling contained, feeling held at the precise edge of expression, feeling that has not yet found the form of action, but that is unmistakably entirely present. Uh, some of you watching this have been that bird in relation to someone, have felt the specific weight of something you wanted to say sitting in you, finding its way to the edge of expression, and then retreating, not because it wasn't real, but because real things are the most frightening things to offer. Because real things can be received badly. Because real things, once expressed, cannot be unexpressed, and the vulnerability of that irreversibility is, for some people, the most expensive thing in the entire landscape of human connection. This reflection invites you to consider, what has your own experience of holding something real at the edge of expression taught you about what it costs a person to restrain something genuine? And does that understanding change anything about how you interpret a silence that might be full rather than empty? Because empty silence and full silence feel different. They have different textures, different qualities of pressure, different ways of occupying the space between two people. Empty silence is resolved. It has the particular flatness of something that has genuinely completed itself. No residual charge, no lingering current, no sense that anything is pressing against the boundary of what has been left unsaid. Full silence is the opposite of all of that. Full silence hums. It carries something. It makes itself felt not through sound, but through a specific quality of presence that empty silence simply doesn't possess. And the silence in the direction of a particular presence in your life, the silence you may have been interpreting as absence, as indifference, as the clean resolution of something that has been allowed to end that silence, may be fuller than it appears, may be carrying something that has not yet found its way into expression, but that has been pressing toward expression with the patient, exhausting, entirely genuine insistence of something that knows it is not finished, that knows the argument it's been having with itself is not actually about whether to reach out, it is about when and how, and whether the courage required will arrive before the fear finds another reason to delay it. This reflection invites you to consider, if you allowed yourself to trust completely and without the usual apparatus of self protection, that the silence you've been living in is not the silence of something over, but the silence of something that hasn't yet found its voice. What would that change about how you're currently holding this situation? Now, love. The word that sits at the center of this reading, that has been circling everything said so far without being directly named. I want to name it carefully because it deserves care. Not the word as performance, not the word as declaration made before the feeling behind it has been honestly examined. The word as the quiet, private, often frightening acknowledgement that someone has become without permission, without planning, in the specific, involuntary way that real things happen necessary, not convenient, not preferred, not even simply wanted, necessary. In the particular sense, that means the version of their life that doesn't include you has become, somewhere in the honest interior of their experience, a version they don't know how to inhabit with any real conviction. That is not a small thing. It is not the language of someone who is mildly interested or casually attached or experiencing the ordinary pull of connection that comes and goes without leaving a significant mark. It is the language of someone who has looked at their own interior honestly in the unflattering light that genuine feeling tends to produce and found you there, specific, persistent, unreplaceable by any of the reasonable alternatives that the self protective mind tends to generate in the hope of making the feeling more manageable. Some of you watching this have been telling yourself a story about what this person feels or doesn't feel that is considerably less generous than the truth, have been taking the restraint at face value, have been interpreting the absence of expression as the absence of feeling, have been building a case quietly and efficiently for why what you sensed, what you felt, in the specific way that the body feels things before the mind arrives with its arguments, was probably not what it seemed, probably exaggerated. Probably the projection of a person who wanted something to be true badly enough to feel it in places where it wasn't actually present. But projection and recognition are different things. And the part of you that has been sensing something in the quality of certain silences, in the specific texture of attention you've been given, in the particular way certain presences make themselves felt, even in their physical absence, that part has not been projecting. It has been registering accurately with the precision that genuine attunement produces when it is allowed to function without the interference of the fear that it might be wrong. The power is yours. It always has been. Not the power to determine what this person will do with what they feel, or when the argument they're having with themselves will resolve into action, but the power to decide how you hold yourself in relation to a feeling that is real on their side and possibly on yours, while the restraint on both sides works out what it is willing to allow. The power to remain open without grasping, present without performing, available without making yourself smaller, in the hope that smallness will be easier to reach toward. If you think this person isn't in love with you, think again, not eventually. Now, in the draft that keeps getting written and deleted, in the phone that keeps getting picked up and put down, in the argument that keeps being had and not resolved, in the silence that hums with everything that hasn't yet found the courage to become sound. Trust yourself with this. The thing you sensed was real. It has always been real. And the only question that remains, the question that belongs to you, and only to you, is what you want to do with the knowing. Before you go, I want to hear from you in the comments. Has there been a moment when you felt something from someone before they expressed it, when the body registered what the words hadn't yet confirmed, and what did you do with that sensing? And what is the one thing you would need to feel, not hear, but genuinely feel, before you allowed yourself to fully believe that someone's silence was full rather than empty? Drop it below. I read every single word, and this space holds all of it with complete honesty. See you in the next one, and listen. The message they keep writing and deleting is the most honest thing they haven't said yet. And honesty, however delayed, has a way of eventually finding its way out. Take care.